This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, an international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. To join our global community and access member-only webinars, events, a wide range of digital learning offerings, coaching and leadership resources, accreditation schemes, and more, you can find us at associationforcoaching.com. Hello, and welcome to another episode in the Coaching in the Climate Crisis series. I'm your host, George Warren, and today I'm joined by not one, but two lovely guests. Jackie Arnold, author, executive coach and supervisor. Lydia Stevens, a thinking partner, facilitator and executive coach. Jackie, Lydia, hello, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, George. Great to be here.
Thank you. Love to be here.
So I'd love to hear a bit about more of the work you're doing. So perhaps, Jackie, maybe we can start with you and hear a bit about the work you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so as you said, I'm an executive coach and coach supervisor. So work both in the public and private sectors, doing both of those. I guess my work is about 40% executive coaching and 60% coach supervising at the moment. And I also work in the health and wellbeing sector and as a climate coach for the CCA.
Thanks. And how did you get to coaching and supervising in the health and wellbeing and then now the climate sector?
Yes, it's a good question, actually. The health and wellbeing, I think, is something that I've always been a part of. Unfortunately, my youngest daughter has been through cancer a couple of times. And because of that, I decided to set up the cancer coaching community in 2016. And we were a group of about 25 coaches who came together. And that is now a LinkedIn learning group. And from that group, I learnt of the Fountain Centre in Guildford, who support cancer patients, their families and carers with coaching, with psychological support. And through that, I met several coaches who were doing that, and they invited me to join them as a volunteer. So I now volunteer for them. And I also lead a coaching group for carers of cancer patients. And also I supervise the coaches in that arena.
That's wonderful to hear, Jackie. And how did you come from there into more coaching around nature and climate change?
Well, I think it's probably part of the journey, really. I got together with the coaches at the Fountain Centre and we produced a book together called Empowerment in Health and Wellness. And when we were talking about it, we realized that a lot of the strategies we were using were going out into nature, the fact that we were coaches who used nature a lot in the work that we were doing. So, for example, when I'm doing my executive coaching in London, I very rarely stay in the office. I take people for walks down by the River Thames, into Hyde Park, Green Park, etc. And the kind of conversations that you have when you're walking beside someone, so you're not face to face, you're walking beside them, are very different from when you're sitting opposite somebody at a desk. And so I think through that, we then realized that we were doing a lot of work with nature, using metaphorical language in nature and helping people to see things from different perspectives. And then I noticed that there was the Climate Coaching Alliance. And so I joined them about 18 months ago. And we started our journey perhaps with them on the 4th of March when we had a huge event with many people from around the world offering workshops on climate change, biodiversity, sustainability. And it was a wonderful event. And from there, I think that's where Lydia and I met and we continue to do our work together.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Jackie. It sounds like the CCA, a hugely inspiring event, 4th of March, was something of a coming together and a spark of which your partnership has started. So, well, it seems like a really lovely point. Lydia, we'd great to hear a bit about the work that you're doing at the moment and maybe as well your story that's got you to that 4th of March connection with Jackie.
Yes, so I'll start with the story. I actually studied in Mexico for a master's in rural development and lived and worked in the communities in the southeast, in the Mayan area of Campeche state, looking at the interface between environment and society and livelihoods, how you can match conservation with the needs to earn a living and be sustainable for the long term. So economic and social and environmental considerations were at the heart of what I did. when I founded Triple Line Consulting with two other colleagues in 99. And we grew the company without really knowing we were doing it. We just packed the fridge and bought a laptop and started off as consultants. But we really seemed to be found a niche that many companies at that time weren't really working on, triple bottom line accounting at that time. And we came from different backgrounds, and we worked a lot with the British government over time, and World Bank and others, and some private sector. And in the end, when I left, I sold the company to an Indian organization, having traveled a lot and worked in different cultures and understood that perceptions matter a lot and psychology of change matters a lot. And I decided to become a coach because I felt that that's where I had the greatest impact. And I thought it was going to be around gender and inclusion and helping women, working directly on breaking the glass ceiling of working and why confidence matters so much in the workplace. And from there, I realized my previous life of climate change and in consideration for the planet and the world around us, plus equality and gender and inclusion, that was all possible to do as a coach. And I've worked in teams throughout my career. So it actually mattered a lot to bring coaching skills into my work and to speak up about sustainability and climate because of the crisis that we're all in. So I brought those two things together and didn't realize that there were 1,000 coaches around the world doing the same thing. So when I finally found the Climate Coaching Alliance, it did feel like coming home. And I've met Jackie and many others, George included, on this platform. And it's a very organic ecosystem where everyone is invited to really offer something and learn and share together. So the non-hierarchical leadership style and being able to express your opinions without judgment is something that I've really welcomed. So Jackie and I are now working together, and we started a new chapter in both of our careers whilst doing other things as well. Both of us walk in nature with clients online and in a virtual world. It's actually been a privilege to not to have to travel, but to travel virtually. And I think both of us appreciate the intercultural nature of working online without traveling. So there's many parallels to our worlds that are bringing different experiences, but coming together at the right time and the right place.
Thanks for sharing, Lydia. It's lovely to hear. And I can really resonate with that sense of, even though I physically haven't moved anywhere significant in the last year and a half, I've been up in Wales. Thanks to the communities such as the CCA, I've connected with people in all sorts of parts of the world at different time zones and different continents, and got to understand and hear amazing stories and hear perspectives from, particularly around the climate crisis, from those that aren't just in the UK, but from so many other places. And that's been hugely and richly rewarding for me.
Yeah, I think we could probably echo that too, because we've discovered many cultural differences. Actually, one of the things that has come out, particularly in the work that we're doing, and I think that's another area where Lydia and I really connected, because we both worked outside the UK for many, many years. I've lived and worked in Italy, Switzerland, and Hong Kong. I've also traveled extensively in the Far East. So I think all those cultural influences are now informing the work that we're doing, because we realize that not everybody has access to nature. And I think that's one very important aspect, is that there are some people that we coach or that we are supporting, and others like us, who realize that bringing nature into the virtual world is also extremely important. So I try to bring nature as much as possible. You know, I've got a backdrop here of nature in itself, and get people to stand on balconies just to do sessions, or to look out of the window at the trees and flowers around them. And if they don't have that, to create that within their own home. And we help them to do that by bringing in flowers or grasses from outside and planting them in a pot near the window, just to see how we can be creative with people and bring nature into all aspects of our work.
Thanks for sharing that, Jackie. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I've got I'm in quite a dark room, but I try and surround myself, even though I've moved house yesterday, I've got my plants around me to stimulate me and my mind. So I'd really like to hear more about the work you're now doing together and the collaborative nature of the work you're doing.
Yeah. So we actually were on a call with Harriet Dodd, I believe, through the Climate Coaching Alliance. And we started thinking it was a good idea to record videos. People we know, clients or even colleagues or associates, just to hear what they had to say about the climate situation where they are. What does it mean to them, professionally, personally? And what would they like a coach to ask them? And we recorded ourselves and why we were coaching first. And then we asked our clients these three questions. What does climate change mean to you? What does climate change or biodiversity mean to you professionally? And what would you like a coach to ask you? And we got amazing response. Both people who were interested in actually being interviewed in the first place surprised us, because people actually want publicity and they want to be on LinkedIn saying how they feel. And they're not shy necessarily of being recorded. Some people are, some people aren't. But in the end, it was an entry point to increasing awareness of how people want to talk about climate anxiety, climate perspectives, passions, hopes, fears, and what they might do to bring that into their work and into their being, how they are as people and humans in alliance with nature, in part of the planetary concerns, being human as one species.
Yes, and I think I would resonate with that completely. Not only that, but I think one of the things we recognized when we first came together, and this is again bringing in health and wellness, that because of the pandemic, because of the climate crisis, when we are meeting with clients, we're meeting them in a space that is very unusual for everyone. And it causes a lot of anxiety. It causes stress because we've noticed that our clients are all working at home. They are working very often in small spaces. So their mental health is suffering. And I think one of the things that we noticed, and we've noticed throughout our work, is that helping people to work with nature and being more aware of nature is also helping their mental health. So some of the things we do with clients, we get them to be present in the moment. We help them to use the strategies that actually we're using on some of the courses that we're running now together. So, helping people to drop from their head to their heart, to their gut, not always to be in their heads, and actually allowing people to see that there are other ways of being, not doing all the time, but other ways of being, and actually exploring with us the natural environment is helping them a great deal towards their own stressors, their own anxieties, and allowing them to realize that actually they can work from home, they can be productive, but they need to slow down and perhaps do things a little differently, because what we've done up to now hasn't been working. So we do have to change what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm thinking, hearing you speak, Jackie, about the work of Tabitha Jane and a lot of the research she's doing around how our own happiness and health is inextricably linked to the natural world and green spaces. And
yeah, we were both on that webinar, weren't we?
We were, yeah. We keep bumping. It's funny there. We keep bumping into each other. And the other thing that it really sparked for me hearing you speak was this idea, in a way, that the coaching space has been a place of slowing down and allowing a thinking time and being rather than doing. And throughout my own life, I've noticed that when I go out for a walk, especially when I leave my phone at home and go out for a walk without any technology, that's the time when I slow down. I feel rather than think, and I feel lighter and happier, and all my best ideas come to me. It's a real cliche, but it really is true. And I'm just noticing, hearing you speak, a parallel between being outside and among the natural world and green spaces and that coaching space as well. And when you combine the two, how powerful they can be.
Yes. I just want to acknowledge Fee McMillan and coaching training course I did just at the start of lockdown, called Outdoor Intelligence for online. And it was very interesting because a lot of the science came in, but also the invitation to have some online sessions, but to actually go out and walk and to experience and freewheel and write down what you're feeling and be as tech free as possible. So really, really get into that mode of creative thinking and what nature can offer us as a partner for metaphors. And we really have had some amazing coaching experiences as a result of that, and building metaphors into the coaching. And it reminds the clients of the sense of where they were at that moment in time, what their realizations were, what their creativity was. And it helps bring it back into their day-to-day practice of work, because they've got that memory of and presence of where we were during that conversation, what it was they were sensing, feeling, smelling, seeing, capturing, and learning. And so I think that there's a very strong experiential side to the coaching in nature.
Yeah, can I say something on the back of that? Because I have a real example of that. There was a lady I was coaching in London, and she was part of a big bank. And she said to me, well, there's no nature around here. And as I'd walked into the building, I'd seen the most amazing modern ground fountain. And she's obviously not seen it before. And I said to her, well, let's just go outside and see what we can find. So she was very up for it. And we went outside and we walked past this fountain. I said, what do you see here? And she went, do you know what? I have never seen this. And I've walked past it every day of my working life, and I've never even noticed it. And it was a very powerful moment for her, because it was an open fountain on the ground with the water spraying up in between. And we walked down the center of it. And as we walked, I said to her, think about, she was grappling with some of her team. And I said, think about some solutions maybe that you could bring in whilst you're walking into the fountain. And she walked through the fountain. She said she was absolutely astounded at how it changed her way of being, way of thinking, and how new ideas came to her, just being open out there in the environment that we were in that watery environment, because it made her, as Lydia's just said, use metaphors to do with the water and to do with the flow of her work. And it was amazing to see, actually, the transformation. And I think that's what happens, and that's what we can see sometimes, the actual transformation in people when they do react and interact with nature.
Thanks for sharing that, Jackie. Yeah, beautiful metaphor there. And it's such a great example of that idea of allowing a space, providing a space as a coach, and trusting that your coachee or client will find something and will be able to make sense or make meaning of what they're seeing, and find resource and strength and solutions in there as well. So you mentioned you're both collaborating on creating a course as well, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, as I'm sure our listeners would as well.
Yes, well, we've created Coaching Beyond, and we're just running the first 2 cohorts, which started yesterday. So this is very live, emergent, but it really went well. We have people from 7 different countries and 4 different continents represented. So we've got a really multicultural group who experience climate change and biodiversity in many different ways and different languages and perceptions. So we are a melting pot of ideas and sparking inspiration. So we've designed a course which is 3 modules. The main framework is Inspire, and we've used Inspire to form a way of being as well as a way of working. And at the end, how that will integrate into their coaching practice. So it's for supervisors, coaches, and people who are working as mentors. We've got someone working with young people. We've got a variety of different contexts. So I'll let Jackie maybe talk about what's happened so far.
Yes, thanks, Lydia. So we've had the first module so far. And I think one of the things that we started looking at was who we are is how we coach and how we supervise. And I've worked for a long time with Edna Murdoch, who coined the phrase. And I remember very well when I started working at the Coaching Supervision Academy with Edna, how that was really a mantra. And I think that's one of the things we brought into the first day of our course was, who you are is how you coach, but who are you when you are coaching in this area? So particularly looking at the climate crisis and biodiversity. It's slightly different. So who you are is how you coach normally, but who you are is how you coach in this environment. And it was very interesting to hear the various comments and feedback. People went into breakout rooms to discuss who they were in this environment, how they were coaching, how they might change the way of coaching, what they needed to focus on. And there were quite a sort of bit of interest that we've had right from the very beginning around confidence. Because I think working at the edge of coaching, which is what we're kind of doing right now, is something that needs quite a lot of courage. And what I think Lydia and I were finding is that quite a lot of our interviews with coaches that we did online were around confidence and how confident are we and how ethical are we when we are bringing possibly a topic into a conversation with clients that they haven't asked for. So it could be that their objectives were X, Y, and Z, and we're bringing in A, B, and C. And how do we do that ethically? And I think actually through the interviews that we've done, Harriet, Lydia, and I, we've realized that actually people do want to talk about the climate situation because it's around us. It's actually there in the news every day. And people are reading about it every day. It's not something that's external to them. It's something they are very, very much involved in. And so it's not something that we're bringing in. It's something that's there already. And people are very, very willing to talk about it. And I spoke to Neil Scotton about Neil's wheel. You know, I was one of the beta testers for Neil's wheel. And there are several things on that wheel that were stretching us in terms of legacy, whole life fulfillment, environment. And when you bring that wheel into a conversation, people look down and they see those topics and they start talking automatically. You don't pull or push them to do anything. You know, it's something that people actually really want to talk about at the moment to alleviate their anxiety and also to see whether we can support them with strategies and tips and techniques to help them to manage that in terms of their own work and their own home life.
Thanks for sharing, Jackie. Yeah, it really goes very deep to me, my own journey. And I'd love to ask, as someone that's also creating a course specifically around coaching in the climate crisis, one thing I wanted to ask you both is, I guess, what it is that prompted you to decide to collaborate and come up with this course?
Yeah, I think we were noticing through the Climate Coaching Alliance that people were afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone. And people have been trained at various coaching schools around the world in a certain form, with a certain philosophy and a certain neutrality in inverted commas, because even not having any perceived, trying to make something neutral is not really neutral. There's no such thing as neutrality because you bring yourself, and even your presence has a ring around it on what your energy you're projecting. So it's just very interesting to see people being a little fearful of the ethical boundaries of coaching and where that lies, how to draw those boundaries. And are we coaching for impact in the world around us, or are we coaching to help the person in front of us? And I think David Clutterbuck, when I interviewed him, he did talk about stretching boundaries. And are we, the vocation of coaching is more than just the person in front of us climbing a greasy pole. It's about what impact we're having and how we play collectively a role in supporting humanity for the future generations. If you are from that philosophy, your coaching is very different to getting people into a world where we have enough, but we want more. So there's a philosophical question behind the coaching. And the course that we're offering is giving people permission to free up the perceptions that might have been imposed during coaching training on what is and isn't the boundaries of coaching and why it might be possible to have a greater impact for a longer term perspective on the planet. If we want to, it's not for everyone, but if we want to help and support future generations and are motivated to bring big thinking, systemic lenses to our clients and think long-term and broadly of cultural contexts, and being part of a shift and a change and a transformation with positive energy. That's really where Jackie and I came together.
Yeah, and I would echo that too, and say, I pick up on the word systemic from Lydia, because I think sometimes we do focus on the person in front of us. Of course we do. But that person is involved in a systemic relationship with the company, with the universe, with their family, with their teams. So we're not just coaching the person in front of us, we're coaching the whole system. And I think sometimes it's our role as a coach to help people to see the wider system. I mean, I'm very often asked, to help with succession planning and to help with things like, how do I think more strategically in my job? And I think one of these things is to help people to say, okay, so let's look outside where you are at the moment. Let's look forward 10 years. Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you want your team to be doing in 10 years? And then also looking at how they're impacting on the environment generally. I don't mean just the nature environment. I mean the environment that surrounds them, both in work, in their corporations, and outside, in the world. So it's helping people to broaden their perspectives. And I think that's something we're doing on the course as well. We're helping people to stretch, to broaden, to move into areas that may have been slightly hidden up until now.
I'm very excited to take part in this course as well next year. Something that came up for me hearing you speak earlier about the Climate Coaching Alliance, and it's something I feel very strongly, and which has motivated me to do a lot of the work I'm doing, is that sense that there are literally thousands of coaches out there, probably tens of thousands, who want to be doing more, who want to be helping. And as you said, Lydia, have this sort of authoritative voice of a teacher. Thou shalt not work to your agenda or anything but the client's agenda. And that's been a very strong motivator for me in helping to harness that collective desire and momentum for that many humans and coaches have to do what we can. And I through my time on many of the events of the CCA, it's really helped me discover what I can do as professionally, as a human, but also as a coach and facilitator, which has really helped give me the confidence to host a podcast series and to start writing articles and to start talking about it to my clients and my neighbors and people I meet randomly, as well as creating a course as well to help pay it forward, as it were. And the work of Joanna Macy and Chris Johnston has been really profound for me. And that sense of doing what we can, and we don't all have to go to Cambridge and get sustainability degrees in order to help, leveraging the skills and the qualities and the talents we all have to help in thousands and myriad different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point, George, about we don't have to be an expert. We know that as coaches. But I think that's another fear, if you like. I don't know enough about this area to be able to coach. Well, actually, we're coaches. We're not mentors. We don't tell people stuff. We work with their strengths. And, it's one of those things that I think we can actually be aware of and broaden people's awareness or extend people's awareness without having to tell. So as coaches, it's just being very curious about what people's values are. Where are your values right now? And every single person on the planet cannot avoid what's going on around us. The natural world is sinking and we need to do something about it. And most people, there are maybe one or two small exceptions and you just let them go. If they don't want to talk about it, that's absolutely fine. As coaches, we let them be. But if they're willing to talk about it, if they'd like to talk about it, and that's our experience, Lydia and mine, we want to encourage that. We want to encourage coaches particularly to be creative in this arena. Lydia and I just at the moment, we talked about it this morning about creating new tools because there aren't any for this topic. So we're helping to co-create with the group some of the tools and techniques that we're going to take forward into courses in the new year. So it is about stretching that awareness and stretching that slightly fearful feeling about, do I dare go into this arena? Well, yes, actually, we can't avoid it.
And Jack, you mentioned the word values there, which my ears pricked up. And now there's something that unites, or there's many things that unite all three of us. And one thing is that we're all very interested in the role of values. It's a subject that is quite literally very close to my heart. So what would you say are the role of values in climate change conversations?
I think they're absolutely huge. I think that if you are value driven, then the heart leads and the mind and body are following what is your passion and your purpose from the heart. And we really have learnt that over, for myself, the last few years, but the Climate Coaching Alliance has probably accelerated that learning, that if you don't use your emotions, then we're not going to change. And I think the psychology and science backs that up, that the world is in a very fragile state and technology alone isn't enough. It is about the mindset, but the passion from the heart. And that is why we're driven to do what we're doing, because there is another way if we can open it up and to tap into it. And the more people that are aware of a heartfelt sense of purpose, I think naturally the world will open up to a different way of being and connection and collaboration. So I think that the personal journey is massive, as well as the ability to bring that space and openness and awe to others. And that's really part of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think to go back on to values, what do we mean by values in this space? And for me, it's about building a trusting relationship, because without a trusting relationship with clients, you can't go into these topics easily. You can't go into any topics that are slightly edgy. So in order to be able to go into these topics in any depth with anyone, it's about the trust between you. I mean, I was telling Lydia the other day, I had a really interesting experience with a lady who, she's very high up in an organization. She's got 2 young children. She was telling me that her husband looked after the children. She's the career one. She's do. And as Lydia mentioned just now, it's not about doing, it's about being. And I introduced her to that topic. I said to her, so if you were being, how would that be? And she's never, ever had a question like that before. And I've worked with her a little bit on what she's doing and how she wants to be. And one of the things she asked me to work with her on was soft skills. So I said, what do you mean by soft skills? And so as a clean language practitioner, I work very much with the language of other people. And of course, she's Indian, actually. So it really helped her to clarify things by me asking her questions about her own language, the language that she used that I wouldn't necessarily have used. And through that, she found the most incredible metaphor for herself so that she could be not only in work, but also at home. And she wrote me an email recently, and I was talking to Lydia about it, saying, it's something that's changed her life, not necessarily work life, but home life particularly. So I think as coaches, we can have such a transformational effect if only we allow ourselves to create those strong, trusting relationships before maybe going into the topics that might be a bit edgy. Create that rapport, get that strong connection with people. And when we have that connection, any topic is on the agenda.
Mm. Yes, you touched on something of a sort of ongoing pearl of wisdom, certainly throughout this podcast series, but also many conversations with coaches that coach around the climate crisis, which is deep contracting, and to really establish that, not try and sort of smuggle in climate change into conversations, but to contract for it first and establish that rapport, that trust, that safety, especially because it's often such an emotional subject.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, Jackie, hearing you speak earlier, a question came up for me, and I wanted to ask, from your prior experience with cancer coaching, I'm wondering if there's any learnings that you've taken from that, and maybe working around such an emotional, scary topic that you've brought into your coaching around the climate crisis?
That's a wonderful question, actually, and yes is the answer without any doubt. I think coaching in the cancer arena has been a real eye-opener for me. First of all, about how resilient we are as a human species. And sometimes we don't acknowledge that. There are horrendous things going on that we don't know about in people's personal lives. We don't need to be fearful of it. I think, again, when I talk about creating a strong relationship, I think that's even more important when you're coaching in the cancer relationships, because people are very frightened. They have a lack of knowledge, and particularly around COVID, particularly around cancer patients, they are grappling with their cancer and they're grappling with the environment. And so it's got an added layer to it. But your question around what I took from that, I think, is to be very slow, because people, when they're fearful, they need space to think. And that's very often what they don't get today. They go from one appointment to the next, and they're pushed by doctors, consultants, and family and friends, and how they can create boundaries around themselves to give themselves that space that they need for themselves, I think is really an important piece that I've taken from the cancer coaching into the climate coaching. So taking things slower, allowing people space, really, really listening at a level that we perhaps never do normally, to really hear what they're struggling with. Because very often when they go to see a doctor, or, in the case of climate coaching, when they start to talk about it with friends, it's all doom and gloom out there. Oh, well, you won't get an appointment because the doctors are too busy. The climate change is going too fast. There's nothing we can do about it. And the problem with that is that we are all going so fast that we forget to stop and think about things that we can do. If I talk about a lady I'm coaching at the moment who's actually terminal cancer, and she knows she's terminal, but she can't talk to her children about it because she feels such a responsibility towards her daughters. And so that piece is really shocking. She can't manage to say to her children, this is terminal, but she does need to have that conversation. And so it's about being curious with her and taking her on a journey, the same way as you might do if you're talking to somebody who's got climate anxiety or is really concerned about the world and the planet today, and to say to them, let's just stop for a moment. Let's take a breath. Let's be in the moment, present in the moment. Because when you're working with someone ill, they need to be right now, right in this moment. They can't think behind, they can't think in front. They can only think of what's going on right now. And I think that's an aspect that I've taken into the climate coaching as well. If people are overwhelmed, and they are, if they're in that overwhelmed state, chunk it down into small pieces that are manageable, that they can say, actually, that's something I can do, and encourage them to do that. No matter how small, it will still make a difference. And I'm always reminded about that little boy walking along the shoreline with his dad, who saw a starfish, thousands of starfishes on the sand who were drying out. And he picked one up and threw it in the sea. And his dad said, there's no point in doing that. There's so many of them, they never make a difference. And he turned around to his dad and he said, it made a difference to that starfish.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, absolutely beautiful, and such a privilege to hear your experiences and around not only cancer coaching, but also what you're taking from that. And so for those that are interested, you said is an action learning group on LinkedIn for the cancer?
The cancer coaching community, yes. Ross Nichols is the monitor of that now. He's leading that. And they do various workshops and things, and they support each other. So cancer coaching community on LinkedIn. Yeah, by all means, go along and join it. And Lydia and I are starting one on LinkedIn as well for our course. So we'll let you know more about that as that evolves.
Fantastic. Thank you. So as we start to bring our conversation to a close today, I wanted to move the conversation to the future and ask, to hear from both of you, perhaps, what you'd like to see the coaching industry evolve into in the next few months, year, couple of years. I'm aware of the urgency of the topic with which we all talking about, but what changes would you like to see?
Okay, so for myself, I would like to see far more collaboration between the major organizations. It's starting to happen. It's starting to happen with the group state, but we need to collaborate a lot more. And I think if we do collaborate more, we'll find solutions that perhaps we haven't found up until now. So for me, it's about collaboration. It's also about, I think the CCA now is going to have quite a big impact, because what they've started to do now is to set up pods. And I think that's another thing. We tend to see the climate crisis as a huge problem. But if it's like everything else in coaching, if we break it down, we can find solutions. So perhaps for not everybody to try to do everything, but to identify some areas that are very critical and then assign people to those areas to work on them. There's conferences, there's talks, and there's strategies, tools, techniques out there that everybody can use, but it's all very sporadic. There's no one place where everybody can go to and say, right, that's where I can go to get a tool for cancer coaching, or that's where I can go to get a tool or a technique or a methodology to learn for climate coaching. So there needs to be, from my point of view, there needs to be a designated area where people can go to for resources, tools, tips, techniques, links, papers, scientific papers, etc., etc. And that's not freely available at the moment.
Yeah. So the Climate Coaching Alliance have a learning pod as one of their pods. And I believe that area of the website is evolving as we speak, which is very, very exciting. We've been all part of the 24-hour conversations. I think I've been part of it 3 times. This 4th of March was the third one. And it was absolutely wonderful to gain momentum around a particular event online in different time zones throughout the world. And I think that as the Climate Coaching Alliance grows, it will also find its own way of collaborating with leadership, because it's not just about talking to an echo chamber of your own voice, but actually going beyond that, building bridges outside the current world that we're talking to, who share our values, to those that don't, and those that have other viewpoints and values. And I think the connections and the collaboration is where we can all help. We all have our own ecosystems and trusted partnerships that we work within. And I think that building up communities of practice, as Jackie said, across different issues, but also amongst different types of people, will be where we can really go and expand. There's no limit, because the way the Climate Coaching Alliance is set up is very, very emergent, without any hierarchy, which is a lovely model of leadership, so that everyone can take responsibility. And that's how Jackie and I just said, well, we'll do this. There seems to be a need. We're hearing that people are needing some courage and some support. So we'll go and give them courage and support. Let's try. And I think that spirit of give it a go is in all of us, but some people find support is needed to untap the give it a go attitude. And I'm fairly open. I think the open attitude to learning and to being different is possible if you're given space and time and opportunity. Therefore, we just give it a go. And if it becomes something that is of interest and impactful, and also is also global. I think I want to say something about the privilege of coaching in a small leadership of few individuals, and broadening the democracy of coaching beyond the sort of people who can afford to pay for it, shall we say, and coaching being truly supportive of those in need and those that don't have maybe resources to pay for it. So finding ways of innovative financial models maybe to pay for coaching, but also to pay for the coaches who need to earn a living. So there's some financial modeling questions around that need to be also addressed, so that the world can together collaborate on equal terms, or more equal terms than currently is the case.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one other thing to that. We're very aware that COP26 is coming along in the UK, And we're very aware that the politicians and the leaders of countries are coming together around the world, not just at COP, but later on as well. And I think that one of the pods in the CCA is the political pod, and they are doing a sprint towards COP26. And I think that's a very vital piece of work, because we can have influence. Lydia and I have also both reached out to politicians to see if we can support them without fee, because we feel that we can actually pose those critical questions that they may not want to face quite yet, but we want them to face. And I think that's something I'd like to see in the future too, that perhaps coaches can reach out and start supporting the people that really can make a difference to the rules and regulations in the world today, because as it goes at the moment, we need to change something radically. And I believe that coaches can really have an impact in that area.
It's a fantastic point, Jackie. And I would offer encouragement to coaches to not only support politicians, but to also challenge them as well. High support, high challenge is a pretty good way to go in coaching. And if you ask me, a pretty good way to go with politicians as well. So for those that want to follow your work or keep in touch, what would be the best ways for our listeners to stay connected with you both?
Well, on my website at the moment, we have the course outline. And as Lydia said, we're going to have courses in February and May 22. So if they want to go on to coachforexecutives.com/coaching-beyond, they can find out more about the course that's running at the moment. And it will be very similar in February and May, but we will build on the feedback we get from this pilot. So, and also follow us on LinkedIn. We're both on LinkedIn, Lydia Stevens and Jackie Arnold. And also some of my books that people might be interested in are also on Amazon. So Tomorrow's Global Leaders Today has been guiding us a little bit in some of the work we've been doing. So please go and have a look at that.
Thanks, Jackie. And Lydia, anything from your side or anything you want to say by way of closing today?
Well, just thank you very much to George for offering us this opportunity, and to Jackie as my collaborative partner in this new journey. We're very inspired and want to inspire others. So please get in touch, and everyone is welcome. There's no shoulds or oughts to be a certain level of understanding or professional standing. We're really humble actually in what we're offering and meeting people where they're at. Every conversation is a joy to have, and we're very curious and want to collaborate.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Jackie. I've hugely enjoyed the conversation today. It's gone to so many expansive, futuristic, but also internal and very deep and personal places with the values. So all of that in about 50 or so minutes. So thank you for all that you've shared. And thank you to our listeners as well for being with us today. I've been George Warren, and this concludes another episode of Coaching in the Climate Crisis, a podcast series for the Association for Coaching. Jackie, Lydia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
This podcast was brought to you by the Association for Coaching. Discover more business coaching resources, thought leadership, and online learning at associationforcoaching.com.